Hey, what's up and happy Halloween. My name is John Bonjour. I'm a comic artist and film enthusiast. I have drawn some art and I would like to enthuse about some film. Today we're talking about Dario Argento's Phenomena. Alright, so like I said before, this was directed by Dario Argento. He's an Italian filmmaker known for things like Deep Red and Suspiria. Deep Red is phenomenal if you haven't seen it, just a hell of a time. And it follows a young girl, Jennifer Corvino, played by Jennifer Connelly, who is sent to a Swiss boarding school where there are a string of murders happening, which she helps solve using her ability to talk to bugs. And that is the actual plot of this movie, even though it does not seem like that would be true. This is a movie that falls under the category of the Italian cinema giallo, which is probably not how you pronounce that, but we're just gonna power through. It's how I'm gonna say it. I looked it up, I googled it. It sounded kind of like that, but more Italian. And I can't do it, otherwise I'm gonna sound a little bit racist or like Mario. And I just don't think those are waters we wanna tread in, so giallo is how it's gonna be from here on out. Which is, if you're not sure, I have the definition. It is an Italian cinema. Giallo is a genre of murder mystery fiction that often contains slasher, thriller, psychological horror, psychological thriller, sexploitation, and less frequently, although in this case, supernatural horror elements. That is from Wikipedia, the source of all information and definitely truth. And it's a really interesting genre of filmmaking. I cannot recommend enough checking out as many of these as you possibly can because they're all fully batshit crazy. I'm shaking up the format of these videos just a little bit. Last time I did what works, what doesn't work, trivia, and wife quotes. This time I'm gonna do what doesn't work, what works, trivia, and I don't really have any wife quotes because my wife didn't watch this movie because she said it sounded weird and didn't want to watch it. So I guess that's your wife quote. What doesn't work about this movie? Anyone not named Donald or Jennifer is not good in this movie. Everyone other than Donald Pleasance and Jennifer Connelly in this movie are pretty rough acting-wise, and there's probably a lot of reasons for that. The foremost being that they are Italian, which means that English might not be their first language, which I can't really fault them for because it's a movie made in Italy. Like it's an Italian piece of cinema, so obviously I'm not going to fault them for that. It is a thing to note just in terms of watching this movie. The acting can be kind of rough. It can have some moments where it really takes you out of it. But for the current context of what you expect for a slasher movie or a horror movie, the acting might not be up to par for what you're hoping for. I do think that the context of when it was made, how it was made, the style that it's going for, I think all of that needs to be taken into account when watching these kinds of movies. If you watch The Conjuring and then you switch over to a giallo movie, you're gonna hate it because you're expecting something completely different from what it is. If you go into it expecting it to be this heightened, overblown, over-dramatic, super interesting, extremely creative, a little bit chaotic and random storm of a movie, then this movie is gonna fit a lot more of what you're expecting with it. So it's an interesting thing. It's why I say you should watch more than one of these movies, because the first giallo movie I watched, I thought it was terrible. I genuinely thought this is a horrible movie. I don't know why anyone would watch this. And then I kept watching more of that genre, that style of movie, and it starts to click. You start to see what they're going for. It's more of a mood piece than it is a story. And I think there needs to be room for that because it's such an interesting space to live in that you don't get from any other genre. But I'm talking about things that don't work. On that note, this movie is extremely overstuffed. It feels like three different halves of a movie just shoved together into one thing. It's like they had the idea for the insect communication, they had the idea for what the killer ends up actually being, that being the mom and possibly the son, but mostly the mom, who for her deformed son, for some reason, I'm sure she explained it, I watched this pretty late at night. And then you have Pleasance's character who's kind of in his own movie, that kind of crime drama, solving a mystery sort of thing. Probably this movie's biggest flaw. Randomly, about halfway through, it just becomes a completely different movie, and I was really on track with what it was doing. By the end of it, it does streamline into something solidified and strong, and maybe one of the greatest horror endings of all time. But that said, the pacing of the movie can be pretty rough at times, and that's most of what I think doesn't work. There are some technical issues. It's the same thing that I said with Dead Alive. Some of the sound isn't great, some of the acting isn't great, some of the effects are a little dated. It's also a low-budget movie made by this crazy guy who loves making these movies. And I really vibe with that genre of film. It's something that I think is really interesting and not explored enough. You get all these big budget studio pictures and yeah, they're cleaner, they're smoother around the edges. All of that is good and can be a positive thing. but you don't get that raw creative energy that you get with something like this, or something like Deep Red, or something like Dead Alive. Which brings us to what does work about Phenomena. Most notably, the giallo elements are so cool in this movie. The pure dripping vibe from this film is so spectacular. We're talking close-ups of knives, big splatters of blood, full-blown crazy music choices that kind of make no sense but bring an incredible tone to all the kills, all the chase sequences. It's the strangest mishmash of heightened, overblown, crazy, weird concepts and imagery and sounds, and it all comes together into a symphony of chaos. This is such a fun movie to watch. I'm so glad that I did, because this has been on my list for a long time. I could not have been more happy with this choice, because it is one of the most creative things I've ever seen. It is already one of my favorites of Dario Argento's movies. I haven't seen them all. I would like to see them all, but man, what a good start. Donald Pleasance also plays a bug scientist with a monkey butler nurse that he treats like his child, and I that speaks to me on a level that I wasn't prepared for. If you haven't watched my videos on the Halloween franchise, you should go check them out. They're pretty fun. But if you have, you know that I love Donald Pleasance with all of my heart. He brought such a weird drunk uncle vibe to every role that he played, and he does such a good job in this. He's a treasure to watch. I loved every second when he was on screen. And also, again, he's got a monkey that it just hangs out with him. We don't really know why. I don't even know what it is that I'm supposed to take away from the idea of this monkey, but it's so good. Don't know why she's in this movie. Don't know what was the thought behind it, but it is the best choice that any movie could ever make. Bug POVs, the crazy music choices, that one student who's obsessed with the Bee Gees, the fact that a character, the main character in this movie, communicates with bugs, and that doesn't really play into the final act of the movie. It's just a thematic device to get us to a certain place in the movie, and that's pretty much it. Give us some things to talk about here and there along the way. What other movie is going to give you Beetle Carey versus Jason Voorhees? This is a film wholly unique to itself. It is something I have never seen before. It ends up being this kind of collection, this mishmash of weird vignettes that all comes together to be a puzzle that you have to solve. It's an incredibly strange film. I loved every second of it. I can't stress that enough. The things that work so strong that it completely counteracts the things that don't work for me. Dario Argento sat down, decided to make this movie, and was like, yeah, there it is. It's perfect. Yeah, like what more could you change? And you know, if they'd taken it to a studio, it would be cut down, modified, made something else. It would be streamlined and homogenized. And it's really extremely not. Also, the end of this movie is fully insane. The vat of guts comes out of nowhere, and from that point on, it just goes. Deformed kid, great effect. Obviously, it's like latex and a mask and whatever, but that doesn't matter. You're so entrenched in the movie that you really don't think about it. There's that shot of Jennifer Connelly in the water, and the fire all around her is reflecting on her face. It is a fantastic shot that I would print out and have as a poster. I think it's beautiful. Oh, and also, my favorite thing about this movie, Deus Ex Machina. The monkey comes in and kills the lady right after the most surprising beheading I think I've ever seen. The third act of this movie goes so hard. I do want to touch on a couple of pieces of trivia. The first and most interesting to me is that this was originally written, the character was supposed to be Al Pacino's daughter. Like that, it was just written as actor Al Pacino's daughter. Not that they were going to cast it. Like the story was about the daughter of famed actor Al Pacino. And he didn't want them to do that because he didn't want them to tell a story about a daughter that didn't exist, which is fair, I understand, but also kind of an unhinged reason to not do that. Don't know if Pacino read the script for this, but I understand if you did. Doesn't really reflect super well on her dad. Maybe he did, and it was like, that was obviously, I don't want to be seen as that guy. The guy who sends his daughter to a Swiss boarding school and doesn't get her out when there's a shit ton of murders happening. Another fun piece of trivia, this was released in the US, slightly different cut under the name Creepers. Look, man, neither title makes sense, so sure, why not? And then the final piece of trivia that I have for you is this was going to have a sequel. It was going to go into production in 2001, which is, let me do some quick math, like 18 years later, something like that. That might be bad math. Anyway, this would have been kind of the first, I think, or among the first of our requels, a thing that didn't end up coming until 2018's Halloween, if my memory serves right. Maybe there's another one that I'm not thinking of, but that was kind of the thing to kick off this requel trend in horror. And I can't help but wonder if Phenomena got a sequel, Would that have changed the way we handle requels? Because I guarantee you Dario Argento would not do boilerplate what you would expect from a requel. Kind of like Halloween, although I like the 2018 Halloween. It was very much bring back the characters, do a very similar thing, pretty much the same movie. I don't for a second believe that the guy who made Phenomena would do a sequel 20-some years later and it wouldn't involve some crazy shit like a kid who can talk to horses or dinosaurs exist or a sludge man who comes back to life. Like, this would not be Phenomena again. It would be something fundamentally different and weird and strange. I kind of wish we got it because I just want to know what that would have been. So there you go. That's my thoughts on Phenomena. It is one of the wildest, most insane, most enjoyable film experiences I've had in a really long time. I hope that you enjoyed it. I actually genuinely would be really curious to know what you thought of this movie if you watched it with me, because I don't know if everybody would like this. I don't know if everybody wouldn't. I have no idea what the read would be on this. Your next movie, next week, we are going to be talking about Wes Craven's Swamp Thing. Yes, the adaptation of DC Comics character Swamp Thing by Wes Craven, Nightmare on Elm Street's own. Little Ghost told me, you know him, he's your best friend. His name's Gary, by the way, for those who aren't in on that. I'll explain that at some point. It's maybe on this site, just any website, could be any website that it's on, but it's on this one. And that's all I have for you. Happy Halloween, you guys. I will see you next week. Thank you so much for watching this video and checking out my channel. If you'd like to hear more of my thoughts on movies, comics, TV shows, various strange deformed child monsters, hit the like button, hit the subscribe, and comment down below what you'd like me to talk about next, or do none of that because I am not your dad. Where else are you gonna get and it's a really interesting genre of filmmaking. I cannot recommend checking out as many of them as you can. That's not right.